Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Perform Happy Podcast. I'm really excited today to have a special guest who has been with Perform Happy for a long time. She is a coach. She's a mom. She's a mom slash coach to one of her 4 young athletes. And you're going to get so much out of learning from her mistakes, her successes. So we're hoping that we can just streamline the parenting instructions on, the operating instructions on how to parent your own child or not or whatever. Anyway, Holly Johnson, welcome to the show.
Hello. So I guess I'll start with my coaching history. I have been coaching for about 14 years now. It's a combination of cheerleading, dance, acrobatics, and tumbling. I guess I started with that because I grew up cheering and tumbling. I absolutely fell in love with it. So I now have quite a few certifications through acrobatic arts, move method, elixir flexibility, all that kind of stuff. I live for it. I absolutely love it, and I'm so glad that I found the thing that I really, really enjoy in coaching.
Yes.
I've got 4 kids. Like Rebecca said, my daughter is the oldest. She's 12, and then I've got 3 boys. Basically, I started teaching my daughter tumbling as soon as she could walk. So, um, I got her into gymnastics at age 3 and ballet at age 3. And as soon as she started ballet, the studio owner there kind of saw my background, and then I was invited on to teach right away from there. So I have been a coach to my daughter since she was 3 years old at her dance studio. And yeah, it's been quite a journey. Um, definitely something that's difficult. I know any parents who have had the experience of coaching your own child in any sport, it can be hard. There's a lot of learning involved. There's definitely a lot involved on both ends where the parents have to learn and the child has to learn. It's not all just on the kid. So
Yeah. Well, and I can see how it becomes natural that you're like, "Oh my gosh, you're so good at you're having fun. Let's try this. Oh, you want to learn this new thing." Like my 5-year-old comes up to me yesterday. She's like, "Mama, I want to learn a back handspring." And my little coach brain's like, "Oh, I know exactly where we should start. Okay, hold a handstand against the wall. Let's see your bridge." I was just like, "Oh, hold on. Don't like it's just kind of fun because then they're like, "Oh, this is so cool and like I can learn it at home." And I could see how that train would leave the station rather quickly, and the next thing you know, you're something goes from fun to like, "Oh, now I really have to like, you gotta get your legs together," and, "Well, that no, you're not strong enough for that, and we're not ready for that," and I could see how that'd be really hard to be, loving, cozy mama when you're like, "No, girl, that wasn't good enough," you know? So how was that balance as you kind of went from, "We're playing around with stuff at home," to, "Okay, now we mean business?"
So it was super fun for the first few years. She loved tumbling. She loved working at home, constantly wanted to gain new skills. She was going to a gym for classes 2 or 3 days a week with a different coach and just doing amazing there. Um, and I guess for as time went on, she began to really, really excel in tumbling. And I would just hear it from the parents there that, oh my gosh, she's so talented. I can't believe how good she's twisting. I think it was by age 9, she was already starting to do fulls by herself. So, I mean, she was just stellar, working very, very hard. And then at dance, it was kind of the same thing. She was working super hard there, um, and really, really excelling in that area as well. So everything was fun until she turned about 9 years old. Like I said, she started to get that full on her own. At the same time, she had made um, a higher team in dance than what she was on normally. She was only 9 at the time. The rest of the girls on this team were 12 and up. So there was a lot of pressure there for her to do well, and make sure that, she's not dragging the team down being the young girl on the team. So that pressure came from me mostly. I was worried about her letting them down. At the same time, I also saw her progress as a reflection on me as a coach. So if she was doing well, I felt like other moms and other dancers or athletes would look at me and say, wow, she must be a really good coach. She really knows what she's doing. Or if my daughter wasn't doing well, I was afraid it would be blamed on me. So there was pressure coming from me to make sure that everybody knew that I was a good coach. um, and then also the pressure uh, to prove herself at the gym because all these parents and even the other kids were just saying how great she was. And so sh- I felt that she needed to continue to prove that.
Mhm.
So it was around that age that she started with the mental blocks, and it started to not be fun anymore because we were focusing on what everyone else was thinking and the expectations that were set rather than why we entered the sport in the first place and
Mm.
enjoying the process as we were going. Instead, we were looking for the end result. Like that full to me was this is what we need. This is what I'm dreaming of her having. I want her to be on the middle school cheer team and my goal is for her to have her full so that she can be a great part of her cheer team in middle school.
Yeah, and she's 9, right? When you're having these
Yes,
thoughts
she
in your
was
head, yeah.
only 9, so yes, I had big plans.
Well, and I first wanna acknowledge you for how amazing it is that you can say that, I was aware that this is a reflection on me, and I think as we're in process of parenting, we're not walking around being like, "She's gonna make me look bad," but it sort of motivates subconsciously the way like my daughter had she's having big feelings about transitioning into 4th grade right now, really big feelings. And she had a meltdown at swim lessons this week. And I was like, oh my gosh, like everyone's gonna be looking at me like, okay, am I looking good here? Am I making the right, like I'm giving the right pep talk? It's like it's so natural to be like, do the perfect thing, please. Like I want everyone to think, wow, she's such a great mom or she's such a great coach. We do it, no matter how much information we know about what's the right, quote, unquote, "thing to do." But the
Right.
fact that you could acknowledge I was, results oriented, aware of what people might be thinking, wanting to look good, those are all very human and normal, but I think a lot of people would struggle to admit that that's the truth in how they approach sport parenting and coaching. So, okay, so then she's hitting mental blocks, you have big dreams for her. How did you initially respond? And actually, what did it start to look like? When she hit a mental block, was it sort of way down the domino effect before you guys started to address it? Or what was that process like for someone who's like, "Does my kid have a mental block?" What was the process for her?
Well, I am very task oriented. So as soon as I saw the problem, I wanted to fix it right away. I think it began manifesting one day when she threw a back tuck by herself at practice and landed not, I mean, it was a little bit dangerous, and I was not very nice about it. I had expected more out of her, and I still look back and on that day, I'm like, why was I so impatient with her? But she didn't land it correctly and then immediately had to leave for another class. So we never really got to deal with it. After that, she started struggling to throw the tuck altogether. And then it began to spiral down into all of her back tumbling so that she could not even throw standing handsprings. So I, as a coach, started to make her work at home. And at first, I went with the old style of coaching where I was bribing, I was punishing, I was pressuring and demanding. Um, and Sorry, it makes me emotional because I feel bad for that little girl.
Mhm.
Um, but she tried really hard, and she's always been known to be a very, very hard worker, and she pushed herself for me. Um, and I think it honestly, it wasn't too long before I looked into Perform Happy, because I had seen mental blocks growing up in my friends and my teammates. But they had all gotten over it pretty quickly. So when she had been going through this for a few weeks, I decided to look start Googling things and looking into other resources to see what was available. And that's when Perform Happy came up. And then I started your program, and that's where we both really, really started learning about what to do and what not to do. Now, I'm not going to say that it was an immediate change. We have been we have been in Perform Happy since January of 2021. So it's been about 3.5 years now, and I'm not going to say that we are there yet. We're still working. But I think one of the biggest things that I have learned through this process is it is not linear. It is not a checklist. Just because your athlete may get a skill back or be able to execute a skill that they were able to before all of a sudden doesn't mean it's going to stay there. And that's okay. And I had to learn to be okay with that, um and allow my daughter to have her own pathway and her own um way of figuring this out. So my way of doing it was to attack it and to try as many things as we could and do as many reps as we possibly could every single day to get things done. But a little bit later, I had to learn that if it's me pressuring her to do the work, it's not going to have the same outcome as if she chooses to do it herself.
Yes. Yes. And it's isn't it interesting how the hardest worker that you've ever met can be so their own worst enemy, and they have to have that element of choice. Because if they feel like they're doing it for anybody else, it's like they're going up the down escalator. They're working so hard, but confidence is being undermined and they don't believe they can do it. And it's like you can just see that internal struggle.
Yeah.
So, when was the first time you started to feel like, "Oh, okay, we're gonna be okay"? Was there a moment where you felt like, "We're gonna get through this thing. We're gonna come out alive"?
Well, admittedly, it took my daughter a while to latch on to what the Perform Happy program was saying. Um, but it was probably about 6 months into it, she started to open up a little bit and try the baby steps and listen when her brain was telling her to stop or to take smaller baby steps. And then she gained almost all of her back tumbling skills back that summer. And that's when, to me, at that point, I thought, oh my goodness, this is working. We're getting through this, and there's hope. Now, fast forward, um, she I'm not going to say that was the end of it, because she kind of has gone back and forth since then. But I still had a lot of learning to do. I still needed to learn to not pressure her, because I was still at the phase of my learning where I was getting excited and she would get some skills back and then I would continue to pressure. So it's still been definitely a learning process. So I have had to let go of expectations. Um, to where she, for example, used to do acrobatic solos in dance. So there would be lots of tumbling in those dances. And while she doesn't have any performance anxiety whatsoever, she struggled to throw the tumbling at practices. So I had to be okay with her kind of phasing out the tumbling from her solos. And she seems perfectly happy with that, but I had to be okay with it to take the pressure off of her.
Well, and it's so I've seen, her journey, which is a
Yes.
gift to be able to see. And there are those moments where kids have these big breakthroughs because they finally open their mind and they're like, okay, I will listen to my brain. I will be patient. I will be kind to myself. And then something shifts. And those shifts, like you said, you had more learning to do. And that is so I'm like, "Yes, that's exactly the mindset that we wanna have, is that every single setback, all it means is that we're all back in the awareness phase, that there's more wisdom to gain that will not only help you to be a better athlete, a better mom, but a better human mean, that's really the whole point of the whole process is to take these super stressful bummer situations of mental blocks and go, how can we become incredible humans as a result of this struggle, not in spite of it? So then, okay, so then you realize, all right, we're getting to the solution, but the pressure is actually continuing to create this problem. So then what was kind of that next work through like?
So she and I kind of battled back and forth for a while because even though I was learning from Perform Happy what to do, it didn't mean that she wanted to listen to what I had to say about it. She had to learn that on her own.
Mhm.
So she, like I said before, has an amazing work ethic. She works so hard. So that determination almost backfired on her because she was determined she was going to execute these skills, whether her brain allowed her to or not. So she would push herself and push to the point of complete frustration and anger on a daily basis when she was doing these skills, just forcing herself to get these skills back. And if you've been through this, you know that the child may throw it that day, but that doesn't mean they're going to keep it, especially if they're doing it this way where they're forcing themselves. So that took about a year. This past year, I also at that time decided to be very hands off. It takes a lot of self-control as a coach and a mom who definitely knows what I'm doing. I've been doing this for quite a while. It took a lot of self-control for me to stay quiet and to allow her to figure it out and to not say, okay, well, let's go practice. And you need to try this if you want your tumbling back. And do you want to have a meeting with this coach or do you want to try going to this gym? It took a lot for me to just be quiet. So I was able to do that pretty well throughout the past year. Meanwhile, my daughter was still pushing herself and not gaining really any consistent progress. But it was probably 3 months ago now that my daughter made the middle school cheer team, and this is just for fun, but of course, that competitive side kicks in, and she wants to do amazing, and so, she was working for that tumbling for her cheer team and seeing finally that she wasn't making any progress with the way that she was doing it. So, she came to me one day and said, "Mom, I wanna try it. I want to try the baby steps, and I wanna work at home with you to see if we can do it the Perform Happy way and just see if it works better because what I'm doing is not working." Um, so that is where I think I saw a breakthrough. And since then, we have been working at home consistently, but not too much because again, you always have to find that balance. And the balance changes. Just because she's okay with it one week doesn't mean she's okay with it the next week. And I have to be okay with her kind of leading the process. So since then, she has been listening to her brain better, doing the two bulk, uh, what is that called? The two bulk
The
method
two
or
block rule,
yeah,
yeah, where you
two bulk rule.
freeze up twice, back it up to
Yeah.
something more manageable.
Yes, she's been listening to her brain so well, and I do still struggle inside with I get so excited, I'm like, "Oh, let's try this," and I'm not gonna say I've been perfect at it, but again, it's a process of both of us learning. So, I think we're at the point now where she is slowly making progress, and I am learning not to put that pressure on her, and then just today, uh, so back up a little bit, her coach has required her to gain a specific skill for the team by a specific date. And she began to really, really stress about that and wanting to work at home on it. So we did. And she came home from practice today, and I said, okay, we have time right now to work on it if you want to, but we do not have to. And today she said, I don't want to stress over it. I don't want to give up on the skill and I'm going to keep working on it, but I don't want to stress myself out because this is supposed to be my fun sport. So, in the back of my mind, I was kind of like, "Oh, I'm the type that like I really really want to go after things." But my smart brain has learned that that's not what matters. Her having fun in this sport is what matters. Her enjoying herself is what matters. And if she's not enjoying it, she's not going to gain progress anyway. So it doesn't matter if we put the work in because her brain is not having fun. She's not going to make progress if she's not having fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so many nuggets of wisdom there that and I see it. And all these moms are like, if I could just beat them over the head with this method, it would work. And I'm like, yeah, it would. Like any kid can have all their skills back in 3 months if they are willing to do a few things that are extremely hard for very determined slash stubborn children, and that determination and that strong will is going to serve them so well. It's why they're so amazing at their sport. It's why the kids that come to Perform Happy are crazy talented, hardworking, type A, straight A's. Those kids, like they've got it in them to be incredible. So their parents are like, you have so much potential. Like we'll do anything to unleash this thing. But what actually these kids need to learn is how to have fun and how to have a voice and a choice and like a just a like to take the foot off the gas pedal is the hardest thing for these kids. That the cheerleader who I worked with who went from can't do a standing back handspring to doing her layouts in 3 months. The thing that girl did right was she listened to her brain and she took steps back. And anytime she was struggling, she took a step to an easier progression. Even if her coach was yelling, she'd say, I just don't feel comfortable enough right now. I need to work on this progression instead. And she was 12, she was like not a grown up, this kid, but she found the willingness to just listen, try, find her voice. And I think it's amazing, that both of you have stuck with it and continue to learn and evolve through this process. And it's so hard though, because you know exactly what she needs to do, and you've got to let her do it in her time,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
can be painful. So what are your strategies for moms out there who are having to bite their tongue right now when they know what their kids need to do, but they just aren't doing it?
So I think the big thing for me is just looking at the big picture. And we've been going through this, like I said, for 3.5 years. So there have been so many times that I've been looking at, well, we have to get this skill by this competition, or we have to make sure this coach is happy with us at this practice. And I'm looking at the short term of trying to basically people please with the other coaches and make sure my child is meeting those expectations when really the big picture is she going to gain more if we take our time and possibly, not necessarily, but possibly get those skills back somewhat permanently if we take our time and do it right? Or if she doesn't, is she going to look back and know that she did her best, but enjoyed her time in the process of whatever sport she's in and um, whatever experience she's having.
Well,
It's
it's
let me
the big picture,
Yes,
knowing that she's going to be better off coming out the other end of her sport healthy, happy, feeling proud of herself than a broken human who forced her way for years and years and never felt good enough. I
yes,
mean, it might look prettier on Instagram,
yes.
but what's the price that you pay and it ultimately doesn't work anyway. We've tried. We've tried to force it and threaten and put time limits, and nobody wins in that situation. It just so if you can, I mean, I know for my girls, if I can have them come out the other side feeling like I'm a hard worker and the value is in the effort and it's okay and you don't have to be perfect like that. If my kids come out the other end of, their youth sport lives with that, I'm going to feel like I was successful.
Absolutely. And I think especially when you're new to Perform Happy, I have noticed, and I did the same thing. When is my child going to get through this? How long is it going to take? And you want to put an end date to it. And it's different for every person, and there's not necessarily an end to it in some cases, because the child may struggle with confidence forever. You just want to make it smaller so that it's not controlling everything that they do. And I look back at our journey, and I've posted so many times on the page that I am so grateful for this, because I have watched my child grow into such a strong person. Um, I think that I even posted this one day that we have recently switched to a new dance studio. Um, and it was our first competition. And so the coaches were just kind of getting to know my daughter and how she handled stressful situations. And before the competition, these coaches were just running these kids. I mean, they were running their dances over and over and over and over and really perfecting everything. And my daughter just absolutely shined in that situation, because she had learned from Perform Happy how to be mentally strong and how to believe in herself, and um, how to push through with determination. And so these coaches were just in awe of how quickly she stood up again and was ready to go again. And they asked all the girls, "Can you give more?" And she said yes every single time. And in that moment, I just was so, so grateful, because these past 3 years that she has been working through this, she has become so strong. I've watched her speak up to coaches where she was uncomfortable in speaking her mind before. And not only in her sports, but in school, everywhere that she goes, she is so much more confident um, as a whole. And, I can't wait to see what that does for her in the future.
Yeah, the big picture is
Yeah.
so important. And I think it's really important for, your journey, because a lot of people are like, okay, how long is this going to take? Like you said, we have 8 weeks. And I'm like, okay, great, mom, you start with your training, because we have to look at the big picture. And the source of the mental block is the mindset. It's that quick fix mentality. That is what causes the problem to begin with, where she's like, I have to get it now. So she's just torturing herself for years with that mindset that's so deeply rooted in, I have to be perfect, it has to be now. And as soon as, the parents can go, why though? Why does it have to be perfect, and why does it have to be now? Is that even real?
Hmm.
What about, can we just be so excited about a tiny, tiny, itty bitty bit of progress? Like, what a better message to send our kids. And ultimately, let's say that you do, like you do get it back really fast. Then she levels up and the challenge increases. Or then the coach says, now focus on this correction. And now your mind is like, wait a second, threat. I am not used to thinking about that. This feels weird. And then the natural inclination is for the brain to go, hold on, slow it down, slow it down. So every time you get a new correction, every time you up level a skill, every time you add it in a new context, confidence drops. That's just the way mastery works. So for anyone to expect permanent confidence, it's just not realistic. So what I'd rather for my kids is that they can ride the life's confidence roller coaster knowing, oh, I feel a little bit off. What do I need? Brain, what do I need? Okay, I need a spot. Let's go ask for it. Instead of, I shouldn't need one. I'm supposed to be perfect. I need it now. Then they go get that one spot, and then they're great. They're good to go. They're reassured. And each of those dips gets shorter and shorter to the point where they're not afraid of them.
Hmm.
I'm like, yay, a step back. Ooh, we've got some good wisdom in this one. I just know it. And then they figure out, oh, well, yeah, my foot hurt. My mom yelled. I didn't eat enough lunch. I didn't get any sleep. Like, of course you couldn't connect your tumbling. That would have been insane if you could. And then they go, oh, I'm not broken. I'm normal. I just need to be kind to myself. And then off they go. So it's so much more than tumbling. It's just so much more than tumbling. That self-awareness that they gain through the process.
Yes.
Okay.
And learning
So
they have value. Sorry.
Yeah. No,
learning
yeah, they value.
you, no matter their skill level in their sport.
Absolutely. Or if they're a good day or a bad day or whatever. So how has your relationship with her evolved as you've changed your approach?
So it went pretty downhill when the mental block first started, as you could imagine, when I was pressuring her and doing everything the wrong way. But as I have evolved as a coach and as a mother, because before, if we had some free time, I was like, hey, let's go practice tumbling. Let's go do some dances and see if we can improve. So that has become a lot better. We're able to enjoy a lot more of our time together, even when we are at practice and we are working on tumbling. So it's a lot more fun.
Okay, and what lessons do you hope other parents and coaches take away from your story?
I hope that coaches and parents can understand that it is a process. Um, and I'm not sure how it is where you live, but I live in a very rural small town area. And out here, the mental side of sports isn't really something that is often addressed. Um, the way of handling confidence in sports and mental blocks is still kind of the old school way. It's more the bribing and things like that, rather than understanding how the brain works. So I'm hoping that more coaches and parents will latch onto this and understand the value of it, not only in tumbling and in gymnastics type sports, but in everything. I have seen a huge difference in my sons just because of what I've learned from my daughter, the poor guinea pig. But my sons are so much more confident because of the way my husband and I have changed our parenting and coaching to take into account the mental aspect of everything that we do in life.
Oh, that's so cool. What's something that you notice that you do with your sons that you kind of wished you had started with your daughter earlier?
So my husband coaches my sons in baseball, and he's naturally a very, very loud, aggressive person. And when I started learning from Perform Happy, immediately, I started noticing the things that he was doing. He was coaching them in the car ride on the way home. He was yelling at them during practice or during games. So I had to kind of tell him what I've been learning. So now he's pretty quiet. He will definitely encourage them and cheer them on during games and practices, but he doesn't try to coach them during practice or during the games. And he stays pretty positive. If he has something that needs fixed, he will usually give it to his assistant coach to tell our children, just because that relationship between parent and child is so much different than a regular coach. So, a lot of times, if you can give it to another coach to handle it, your child is going to respond much, much more patiently.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that he has seen the difference it's made, because at the beginning of this process, my sons were not patient with themselves. They would cry during games and get upset if they failed, and now that he's quiet, he sees the difference in our boys and how they get over things much more quickly, and they're able to perform so much better because they're not stressing about failing.
Yeah, I mean, it we type A people, we breed type A people. We do. And so then well, and that's the power of modeling that then if they see us being like, "Hey, kiddo, I saw you working hard. Don't stress about the outcome. I'm proud of you. I'm so proud that you showed up and you did your best." And they're like, "What?" It's confusing at first because they're like bracing for the lecture. And then you're like, "Let's get ice cream." And they're like, "Huh? We're celebrating my loss? What is this?" But then they start to feel like, "Yeah, I showed up and I tried and okay. I wanted to win and I wanted to not mess up, but maybe I still have value even if we didn't win today." Like
Yes.
what a big lesson because they're going to have failures in life and in business and in relationships and to be able to go, "Okay, what do I need right now? What kind of support do I need right now?" I think is huge.
Mhm.
Oh man. Oh, Holly, thank you so much. It's you're just such an honest, vulnerable journey that you have shared with us. I'm so happy to have you in our group and I just hope other parents are inspired. Any final notes as far as like to that parent who's still coaching their kid? like top piece of advice that you'd like them to leave here with?
Well, to if I'm 100% honest, the top piece of advice I have is to not coach your own child if you can help it, because your relationship with your child is so much more important than you coaching them. And I know that it's fun, but to me, it's not worth it. If you have to coach your child because you don't have another option, um, patience is the main goal, and focusing on the kind of human being that you want to create in the end game, and whether or not they can achieve specific skills isn't going to matter. Most of the time when they're 25, they're probably not going to be doing this anymore. So I always try to think about, am I gonna be more proud of them for doing a runoff handspring full at age 15? Or am I going to be more proud of them for being a great, being successful in whatever career they choose, and being a good citizen, and caring about their family, and being determined and believing themselves to get through the challenges in life, because they're going to continue having challenges obviously forever. So,
Yeah, it's so much more than tumbling. So
mhm.
much more than tumbling. Thank you so much, Holly. This has been such a gift. I know a lot of people are going to get so much out of this. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.